Hello, hello everyone. So we are live again. Please share this session to your friends, to your known ones, so that we can start with the session as soon as possible. Before that, just let me know that whether I'm audible or not. Am I audible? Am I perfectly audible? Am I perfectly audible? Somebody is replying yes. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Hello. So this is the third part of the nervous system. Let me tell you that in the last previous two classes we have seen the structural basis of this nervous system, what components involve and makes up the nervous system. Also we have discussed the basic structure and function unit of life, that is the cell, which that particular cell which actually makes up this whole nervous system is the neuron. We have also seen how can you distinguish between the types of neurons, that is a sensory neuron, motor neuron, and association neuron. Apart from that, we have also seen that how impulses, that is the electrical messages, passes on from one neuron to another neuron. Basically how the neurons, the adjacent neurons, communicates with each other. Fine. Now, in the last class, due to some technical issues, we had to stop the class in between. So I'm just going to brief a little bit about the things that we have already covered in the last class, and then we are going to proceed further with the actual structure of brain, the cerebellum, medulla oblongata, and the cerebrum. So before that, just just share this session with your friends, with your known ones, so that we can start with it quickly. Okay, now let me tell you before I begin that we are just not providing you the free lectures, we are also providing you free mock tests, DPPs, and test papers. For that, how can you access all those things? Well, for that, what you have to do is you have to go to the Google Play Store and download the app Naguru. Once you download the app, you log in into the app, and then you have to go to the search bar or the search button. After you search, after you go to the search button, you can just search 10th ICC mock test. There you're going to find all the mock tests in a very sequential manner for the subjects like mathematics, physics, chemistry, and biology. The questions that has been prepared, the lines has been exactly taken from your Selena book. There are many pro books that are prescribed for the ICC curriculum, but Selena is regarded as one of the standard books for this ICC curriculum. So lines has been taken from the Selena book, and we have framed the questions in such a way that it will give you a perfect revision for the whole syllabus. Apart from that, if you have any kind of inquiries, you need any kind of free mentorship or guidance, you can call on this number, or also you can WhatsApp us. We will definitely reply you back in 24 hours. Fine. Come on, share this session with your friends and your known ones. Now let's begin with it. So we all have seen that nervous system comprises of brain, spinal cord, and nerves. All these components, all these organs are formed by a small unit which we called as neurons. These are nothing but the cells, the structural units which makes up this whole nervous system. Now we have also seen the structure of a neuron, how a neurotransmitter is passed on from one neuron to the another neuron, and this transfer of neurotransmitter actually occurs between the axon ending. That is basically what happens, that the neurotransmitters present inside the vesicles of the synaptic bulb are transferred from one neuron to the dendrites of the another neuron. Now let me tell you कि हम लोग ये चीज पिछले क्लास में देख चुके थे that जब भी कोई न्यूरल impulses आती है तो उसे रिसीव करता कौन है, that is received by the dendrites. Fine, that is received by the dendrites. So the function of dendrites is to receive the electrical impulses or the electrical messages. Fine, but who is actually sending this? Who is actually transferring all these neurotransmitters? What are neurotransmitters? Neuro means it is related to nervous system. Transmitters means chemicals that are produced and are transferred from one neuron to the another neuron to initiate the whole process of this uh, chemical signaling, right? Now, with the next thing, so we have also learned some few terminologies, basic terminologies. Then we have also seen what is synapse, that is, it is the gap between the two synaptic cleft Primarily, it is the gap between the two neurons, primarily between a dendrite of a neuron and an axon ending of a neuron. Now let's come to this types of neurons. We have seen reflex action, we have seen the pathway of the reflex action. Everything was completed in the first class itself. Then what is the difference between a nerve and a ganglion? Everything we have discussed. Now I would recommend that if you are watching this lecture for the first time, I would recommend that you must see the first and the second part, and then you can just watch this lecture for a better clarity. Now last class we have already discussed the division of the nervous system, but due to some technical issues, we had to stop the class in between. So I'm going to revise a little bit about the divisions of the nervous system. Now what we have done is we have divided this nervous system into two major parts or subparts. The first part is the CNS, which we called as central nervous system. From the name itself, we can understand that it is the center part of our body, organs which comes at the center of our body, that is the brain and the spinal cord. It is the center that comes at the center of our body, so it is termed as central nervous system. It is what? It is central nervous system. Now in this central nervous system, what things are being classified? We have brain under the central nervous system. Why? Because brain is placed at the center of our body. Then we have the spinal cord. We have the spinal cord. Now we all know that this brain and spinal cord काफी ज़्यादा delicate organs होते हैं, तो इनको protect करने के लिए we have specialized bony structures. We have specialized bony structure. So this brain is being protected by a bony cage like structure. This is called as skull, whereas the spinal cord is protected by a long process or a set of bones that we called as vertebral column. Vertebral column. Now, let me just tell you, this vertebral column is not a single structure, but it is rather made up of small bones which we called as vertebrae. So what happens? These small vertebrae bones, makes up a pile and then creates a long process which we called as vertebral column. So these are what? These are vertebrae. These are vertebrae. These are small C-shaped bones which are placed one after another and makes up the vertebral column. Now we have PNS, that is peripheral nervous system. What do we understand by central nervous system? That is something which is at the center. So all the coordination, all the components, all the organs which are present at the center of our body and actually coordinating all the activities that is going on. Fine. PNS. P stands for peripheral. Peripheral nervous system. That means something which is at the periphery of our body, like our nerves. Nerves are not present at the center of our body. Those nerves actually emerges, वो सारे emerge होते हैं brain या spinal cord से and are evenly distributed in our body, so as to जो भी brain या spinal cord चीज़ें coordinate कर रहे हैं या फिर चीज़ों को process कर रहे हैं, तो उन्हें transfer भी तो करना होगा to the different parts of our body. तो वो करेगा कौन? That is actually done by the nerves that is distributed all over our body, okay, all throughout our body. Now, under this PNS, we have two major systems. One is somatic nervous system. Somatic nervous system. And the other thing that we have is autonomic. Autonomic. Autonomic nervous system. Okay. From the word somatic itself, we can understand. Somatic means soma word का मतलब होता है body. Soma word का मतलब होता है body. What happens is, under this peripheral nervous system we have two major systems, that is somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. What happens is, this somatic nervous system is responsible for all the voluntary actions that is going on inside our body or outside our body. Okay, so this is actually associated, or it actually controls all the voluntary actions. It actually controls all the voluntary actions in our body. So basically what happens, it sends the impulses or it sends the messages to the voluntary to the muscles to execute the voluntary actions. ये क्या कहते हैं, ये जो nervous system है, this part of nervous system, this is a part of nervous system जो associated है हमारे voluntary actions के साथ. जैसे अगर मैं ये हाथ उठाने का कोशिश करूँ, तो it is actually what? It is actually voluntary action. Why? Because I am willing to lift up my hand. Okay, something which is under our will. that is called as voluntary actions. तो ये जितने भी actions है, जितने भी voluntary actions है, उन्हें कौन coordinate करता है? That is done by somatic nervous system, and it is associated with the muscles which are involved in this voluntary actions. Whereas this autonomic nervous system is actually associated with involuntary actions. Involuntary actions. All the involuntary actions. Just a blinking of an eye, breathing. These are what? These are involuntary actions. That is not under our will. Okay. Now, what happens? Now, further, we have divided the nervous system into two components. That is central nervous system, that includes the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system, that further includes the somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. Now, let me tell you, this somatic nervous system is further can be classified into two kinds of nerves. These can be called as cranial nerves. Cranial nerves. Cranial nerves, and the other one being the peripheral nerves. Peripheral nerves, or which we called as spinal nerves even. So it's better to write spinal nerves here. Spinal nerves. Now, from the word itself we can understand cranium. Cranium is what? Cranium is the bony box which actually protects the brain and the other facial organ, facial bones. So that is what? That is cranium, the brain box. So वर्ड से ही समझ में आ रहा है that all those nerves which are emerging, जो कि emerge हो रहे हैं brain से, वैसे सारे nerves जो कि emerge हो रहे हैं brain से, उन्हें हम क्या कहते हैं? We call them as cranial nerves. Now there are total 12 pairs of cranial nerves. There are total 12 pairs of cranial nerves. Whereas spinal nerves are the ones which are emerging from the spinal cord, जो कि spinal cord से emerge out हो रहे हैं, and they are 31 pairs. They are 31 pairs in total. Fine. So these are two kinds of nerves that once that yes hello that pair of nerves which arises from the brain, उन्हें हम क्या कहेंगे? Cranial nerves. And pair of nerves that arises from the spinal cord, which is emerging out of the spinal cord, that we are going to call it as spinal nerves. वो 12 pairs के होते हैं, that is the cranial nerves, and spinal nerves are in total they are 31 pairs. Now let's come to this autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is basically associated with the involuntary functions in our body. All the involuntary functions that is going inside our body is actually coordinated by this autonomic nervous system. Now, as we have divided the somatic nervous system into two kinds of nerves, we can further divide this autonomic nervous system as sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic nervous system. Since I don't have enough space here to write, so I'm just going to tell you what is the actual mechanism behind it. What happens? Sometimes you must have felt when you are in a fearful situation, or or when you are very nervous about something, you feel that uneasiness in your body. Your heart starts palpitation, you start to sweat, and all those things that is the body is adapting is actually coordinated by the sympathetic nervous system. So it is responsible for preparing your body for the fearful situation. Okay, so whatever fearful situation you are encountering, or you are into that, what happens? This sympathetic nervous system actually prepares your body to encounter that fearful situation. Okay, so ये sympathetic nervous system करता क्या है? हमारे body को prepare करता है कि हम उस situation से adapt कर पाए, उस fearful situation से adapt कर पाए. या फिर अगर हम लोग, बहुत बार होता है कि किसी जैसे एग्जाम्स देने जा रहे हैं या इंटरव्यूज में बैठ रहे हैं, तो what happens? We always feel that uneasiness inside our stomach. All these adaptations are actually happening just because of the sympathetic nervous system. Now what happens कि एक बार हम लोग डर गए, नर्वस हो गए, तो हम लोग उसी स्टेट में तो नहीं रह जाते. आवर बॉडी रिटर्न्स बैक टू द ओरिजिनल स्टेट अगेन. ठीक है, हमारा जो बॉडी है वो वापस से ओरिजिनल स्टेट में बैक करता है. तो उसके लिए कौन रिस्पॉन्सिबल है? दैट इज दैट अगेन दैट ओरिजिनल स्टेट इज अगेन ब्रॉट back by this parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, this is brought again back by parasympathetic nervous system. So we can say that sympathetic nervous system is responsible for preparing our body for any kind of fearful situation, whereas this parasympathetic nervous system actually brings our body back to the original state. Fine, brings our body back to the original state, right? So ये है sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. When we are talking about the spinal cord and the types of nerves, we are going to discuss about them in detail. Okay. Now this was the overall classification of the nervous system. Now let's come to the brain. Let's come to the brain. Now, what is brain? Brain is the most delicate and the most important organ inside our body. Without a brain, our body cannot function properly. If your brain is not working properly, all the other systems, whether you take this circulatory system, digestive system, respiratory system, and all other system associated with the brain, cannot function properly if your brain is not functioning properly. So, brain is what? Brain is actually the master gland. Okay, it is actually coordinating. Sorry, master organ. It is actually coordinating all the things that is going inside your body. Now, this brain is actually very delicate, and you have to protect it with some kind of hard or tough or fibrous thing. So, this brain is actually protected by the skull. It is what? It is a bony box inside which our brain is kept, right? So, this bony cage is called as, or bony box is called as skull. The weight of the brain is 1.35 kg. So these are some few data that you need to remember. But again, from the examination point of view, most of the time these data based information is not being asked in the examination most of the times. That means it's not necessary. जितने भी numeral data है, जैसे weight हो गया, diameter हो गए, volume हो गया, ये सब generally exam में बहुत ज़्यादा पूछा नहीं जाता है. But yes, obviously for safe side and for with the perspective of gaining a knowledge, you can learn this. Now amount of water. Do you know there's a fun fact that 80% of the brain is actually is of water. It is actually means what to say? How can I say this? That inside our brain, 80% uh, the component which has the highest or what can I say, that 80% of the brain is made up of water. Okay, 80% of the brain, the volume, 80% volume of the brain actually contains water. So I'm just writing it here. 80% of water. Inside our brain we have 80% of water. Now also, just not that, oxygen, whatever oxygen we are breathing in, 20% of the oxygen which is breathed in is actually utilized by the brain, okay. So these things are quite important. Now coverings. Now as we all know that brain is what? Brain is a very delicate organ, right? So having a skull to protect it is not just enough. We have some other extra membranes or extra other sheets or extra other coverings. These coverings are called as meninges. Now, this meninges is not a single. This is not a single layer or a single membrane. Meninges is actually made up of three layers. Meninges, this covering, this membranous. What is meninges? This is nothing but a membranous covering. This is a membranous covering which protects the brain. Now, this meninges is not made up of just a single layer, but it is made up of three layers. Okay, it is made up of three layers. The first layer is called as the dura mater. Dura mater. Then the second layer is called as the arachnoid. Arachnoid. And the innermost layer is called as the pia mater. Pia mater. Fine. Now let me explain you with a rough diagram. Suppose this is our brain. This is our brain, and we all know, if anybody has ever seen a brain in a picture or a real brain in a hospital, you might have seen that brain का जो structure होता है, brain का जो surface होता है, it is not smooth. It has some ridges and grooves. कुछ गड्ढे जैसा structure होता है, कुछ foldings होते हैं. इन foldings को हम लोग क्या कहते हैं? Gyrus and sulci, जो कि हम लोग ब्रेन को जब हम लोग डिटेल में पढ़ेंगे, देन वी आर गोइंग टू डिस्कस दैट. Then there we are going to discuss. Now what happens? This brain is actually protected. This brain is actually protected by the skull. So suppose this is the bony layer of the skull. Suppose this is the bony layer of the skull. This bony layer is not enough to protect this delicate brain. What happens in between this skull? This is the skull, and this is the surface of the brain, right? In between them, there is a space where this meninges occupies. Okay, this meninges occupies the space. Now we know that meninges is not a single layer membrane. It is three layer membrane. So what happens? The outermost layer, this is the dura mater, which I'm making it with a blue color. Okay. Then the middle layer, which is called as the arachnoid. I can make this with yellow color. Okay, I'm just highlighting this with the yellow color. This is the arachnoid, and then inside it, there's another layer which we called as pia mater. This is called as pia mater. Okay, and this layer is directly in contact with the brain tissue. So if it is asked in the question that which layer of meninges is directly in contact with the brain tissue, that is actually our pia mater. Okay, so let me tell you that this the layer which has been highlighted by blue is nothing but the dura mater. Then we have this yellow color thing is called as arachnoid, and inside this, the innermost layer of meninges is called as the pia mater. Okay, and this pia mater is actually in contact with the brain tissue. This pia mater is actually in contact with the brain tissue. Now let's look at the picture of the meninges. So this is a human brain. This is a human brain, and we have elaborated, the picture has been elaborated in this way. Okay, so let's connect with the diagram. Now what happens if you see it carefully? If you see it carefully, hello, come on, share this session with your friends, with your known ones. Come on, share this session quickly. Okay, now if you can see the layer of meninges. Now what is this? This pink color is nothing but the surface of the brain, and you can see there are numerous numbers of convolutions or folding. ब्रेन का जो स्ट्रक्चर होता है वो स्मूथ नहीं होता है, वी ऑल नो. ब्रेन has the cerebrum has many convolutions. Convolutions means foldings, right? Now why it has foldings, that also we are going to see later on. Now this is actually the skull. This white layer which you see is the layer of the skull. This is the bony protective layer which protects the brain. This is what? This is the skull, right? Now inside this skull we have this dura mater. This one is the dura mater. Then inside dura mater we have another layer which we called as arachnoid. Then inside arachnoid, this particular thing, this thin layer which is in directly contact with the brain, is called as pia mater. This is called as what? This is called as pia mater. Fine, this is called as pia mater. Now these three layers can be distinctively differentiated on the basis of some parameters. Okay, now what happens, ये जो ड्यूरा मैटर है, this is actually very tough and fibrous. Okay, it is made up of very tough fibrous tissues. So I can just write it here, dura mater. The word dura has derived from durable, that is something which is tough and fibrous. Tough and fibrous. And it is what? It is a thick layer. It is a thick layer. Then the second layer that we have is arachnoid. Arachnoid. Now there is a specialty about this arachnoid. This arachnoid is actually a web-like layer, network-like layer. मतलब इसमें काफी सारी network जैसा arrangement है या जाली जैसा arrangement है, जैसे हम लोग एक spider के web में देखते हैं. Now if you see the picture carefully, then you can see a number of web-like structures like this. These are the web-like structures. Web-like structures. This is nothing but the arachnoid. Okay, so it appears kind of web-like structure. Now, the last layer or the innermost layer is called as the pia mater. It is called as the pia mater. Now, this pia mater is actually filled with blood vessels. Okay, so this is the reason this layer is called as vascular layer. Now, you might have understood this term vascular. What do we understand by the term vascular? We have already discussed this thing in the circulatory system. Vascular means uh, something which is in the form of vessels and carrying some kind of fluid. So blood vessels are the vascular system inside our body, and this pia mater is highly vascular. That means pia mater के अंदर जितने भी blood vessels है, जितने भी blood है, जितना भी lymphatic system है, सब कुछ इस pia mater के अंदर पाया जाता है. So this pia mater is what? It is vascular. It is highly vascular. Fine. And it provides all the nutrients. It provides all the nutrients to the brain, essential for its development, growth, and survivability. And it is very thin. This layer is very, very, very thin. Okay, this layer is very thin. So these are the three layers that you can find inside meninges. Okay, all these three layers makes up the meninges. Meninges. Now, next, let's come to the next slide. What is meningitis? Now, sometimes what happens, बहुत बार बैक्टीरियल इन्फेक्शन या वायरल इन्फेक्शन की वजह से जो मेनिंजेस है वो इफेक्ट हो जाता है और इन्फ्लेम हो जाता है या स्वेल हो जाता है या किसी भी तरह से इफेक्टेड हो जाता है. तो उस तरह की बीमारी को व्हाट वी कॉल्ड एज meningitis. So we can just simply write it in a sentence that inflammation of the meninges is called as meningitis, and this inflammation takes place due to either bacterial infection or some kind of viral infection. Now we have another kind of fluid which we call as cerebrospinal fluid. Now, one thing we need to understand that if we are talking about some kind of fluid, any fluid that is present inside any part of our body is actually associated with the function of lubrication. Is actually associated with the function of lubrication. Okay. Hello. Come on, quickly share this session. Okay. Okay. Now, cerebrospinal fluid. From the term itself, we can understand cerebro means this word has been taken for cerebrum. When we get to know about the parts of the brain, then we are going to detail them. Spinal means spinal cord. Spinal cord. That means a fluid which is present inside the cerebrum and also protecting the spinal cord. Okay, so this fluid, like we have studied about synovial fluid, right? In this in our previous classes in the chapter of skeletal system, that synovial fluid is actually present. This synovial fluid is actually present between the two bones, right? That is actually present between the two bones. Fine, that is present between the two bones. Just a minute. Okay, that is present inside the cerebrum. Okay, that is present inside the cerebrum. Now, this fluid is also protecting the spinal cord. This fluid is also protecting the spinal cord, right? Now, this fluid, what does it do? It actually, it actually lubricates. It actually helps in lubrication. It actually helps in lubrication. Okay, now what happens that uh, if you if your brain sometimes get encountered with some kind of injury, okay, or if it is hidden by some kind of hard substance, then what happens, this fluid is actually giving it a lubrication. Now if I take an example this way to make you understand, if you fall on a bed and if you fall on the floor, where will you get hit? Obviously when you fall on the floor. So now the reverse thing, if you fall on the bed, what will happen that your body part will not get affected that much. Why? Because that bed has a cushion and it will actually absorb the shock. Fine, but it won't be happen. But it won't be happening the same when you fall on the floor, right? So what does it do? This fluid also gives a cushion. It absorbs the shock. Okay, so helps in it helps in absorbing absorbing shock. Fine, right? Now let me tell you this, as you can see from the word itself, that it is just not present inside the brain, but it is also present covering the spinal fluid. So the main location where it is present, it is inside the ventricles of the cerebrum. Cerebrum. Now what are ventricles? This term can be a new term for you. Ventricles are, there are certain hollow space inside the cerebrum. Okay, cerebrum के अंदर बहुत से hollow spaces होते हैं, बहुत से खाली spaces होते हैं जहाँ पे कुछ भी नहीं होता है. तो उन hollow spaces में होता है क्या है, ये जो cerebrospinal fluid है उस जगह को वो fill करता है. ठीक है, ventricles are nothing but the hollow spaces that is present inside our brain. Not just that, we have this neural canal. We have a neural canal. Okay, what is this neural canal? This is a long tubular canal or a hollow canal through which the spinal cord passes. Through which the spinal cord passes. Okay, so inside this neural canal also, this cerebrospinal fluid is present, which actually lubricates and helps in absorbing shock for this spinal cord. Fine. Clear till here? Now let's move to the next slide. Now parts of the brain. We are going to discuss the parts of the brain. Okay, now we are going to discuss the parts of the brain. So if we try to divide the brain into three parts, then it will be forebrain, forebrain, then we have midbrain and hindbrain, hindbrain. These are the three parts of a brain: the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Now, we are going to understand this with the help of a picture also. But before that, let me also classify this way. Now, what happens? See, what happens? This forebrain is nothing but the outer, this the whole portion, this the whole big portion of the cerebrum that you can see is the forebrain. Then there's a small portion. This is a small portion which we called as midbrain, and the lower portion, this portion from here, the hindbrain starts. Now let's classify them. Now this forebrain is actually accommodating two spaces. This forebrain is actually accommodating two spaces. First, it's called as diencephalon. Diencephalon. Now what is this diencephalon? Diencephalon एक ऐसा जगह है जो जिसके अंडर थैलेमस थैलेमस एंड हाइपोथैलेमस हाइपोथैलेमस रिसाइड करता है. थैलेमस एंड हाइपोथैलेमस रिसाइड करता है. फाइन. देन देयर इज अ बिग cerebrum. There is a big cerebrum. Okay, this by the picture itself we can understand this is the whole big cerebrum. Okay, now, and this is the largest part of the brain. This is the largest part of the brain. Largest part of the brain. Now midbrain. In midbrain there is aqueduct and all those things, but you don't have to study. Midbrain, you have to just remember the name that there is a small part which is in between the hindbrain and the forebrain that we called as midbrain. The internal structures we don't have to study for this level. Now let's come to this hindbrain. Let's come to this hindbrain. This hindbrain comprises of three organs or three parts. The, this is the cerebellum. We have the cerebellum, which is also called as little brain. Little brain. Why do we call cerebellum as a little brain? Now let's check it with the picture. This is actually the cerebellum. This is actually the cerebellum. This is called as little brain. Why? Because it almost resembles with the cerebrum. With the big cerebrum, we can see it almost, the structure almost resembles the big cerebellum. But there are certain differences even, okay, that we are going to discuss later on. Cerebrum, then we have pons veralis, pons veralis, and then we have medulla oblongata, medulla oblongata. So these three parts comprises the hind brain. These three parts comprises the hind brain. So we have forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. Forebrain comprises diencephalon and cerebrum. Diencephalon is a part which comprises thalamus and hypothalamus. Now, what is this thalamus and hypothalamus? Thalamus and hypothalamus are very sensitive region of the brain. This thalamus actually coordinates everything: the temperature of your body, the water balance inside your body, the mood, whether you are angry, whether you are happy, or whether you are sad. Everything is regulated by this thalamus. The hunger, whether you are hungry or not, whether you are thirsty or not. So everything is being balanced by the thalamus. Hypothalamus is related with the regulation of certain things like body temperature and all those things, but mainly it regulates the hormonal coordination inside our body. When we are going to start the endocrine system, तो किस तरह से hormones regulate होते हैं हमारे body में, किस तरह से उसे release करवाया जाता है हमारे body में, किस तरह से उनका coordination होता है, everything is being seen or it is being monitored by this hypothalamus itself. Okay, it is monitored by this hypothalamus itself. Then we have cerebrum, the biggest or the largest part of the brain. Then we have midbrain and hindbrain. Hindbrain comprises three structures, and this is the base of the brain, which we call the three structures are cerebellum, pons viralis, and medulla oblongata. Now let's connect with the diagram. Let's connect with the diagram. So this whole big portion is called as the cerebrum. This is called as the cerebrum. This part is the diencephalon part. So somewhat this is the thalamus, and just below this thalamus lies the hypothalamus. So this thalamus hypothalamus means the diencephalon part, and the cerebrum comprises the forebrain. Then we have this small portion which is highlighted by green color, is called as midbrain, and then we have the hindbrain. Now inside this hind brain we have three structures. तो कौन कौन से वो तीन structures थे? सबसे पहला, this this swelled up structure is nothing but pons है. This is pons viralis. Pons viralis. Then ये है हमारा cerebellum. Cerebellum. Cerebellum को हम लोग little brain भी कहते हैं. Little brain भी कहते हैं. Why? Because it resembles the forebrain. The cerebrum, but there are certain differences even that we are going to document later on when we are studying this cerebellum separately. Now the other thing, the last stem like structure, this is a stem like structure, एक डंडे की तरह है. This is what? This is the medulla oblongata. This is medulla oblongata, and it further extended as spinal cord that we are going to again discuss later on. Fine. Now let's move to the next slide. Okay, so this is the whole documentation. This is the whole summary that I have put. This picture has been exactly taken from your Selena book. Cerebellum, cerebrum is associated with intelligence, memory, consciousness. So everything that you are doing, हम लोग सोच रहे हैं, बोल रहे हैं, पढ़ रहे हैं, लिख रहे हैं, movement हो रहा है हमारे body में, हर चीज, even dreams, everything is actually coordinated by the cerebrum. And this is what? This is the largest part of our brain. This is the largest part of our brain, which is classified under forebrain. Then we have this diencephalon. Thalamus relays pain and pressure. Yes, one more thing that I have missed here. If you are feeling any kind of pain or pressure, like if you're pricking your fingers with something, that feeling that yes, I'm getting pricked, that is actually generated, that is being coordinated by this thalamus. Okay, and किसको impulses भेजता है? Cerebrum को ये impulses भी भेजता है. Now next, hypothalamus, it controls the temperature and the actions of the pituitary. Pituitary is the master gland of an endocrine system, which actually regulates all the hormonal functions and everything that we are going to discuss later on. Then we have this midbrain. Midbrain is actually involved with reflexes associated with our eyes and ears. Again, this is not there in your syllabus, so I am not going deep detail into it. हाइंड ब्रेन में आते हैं हम लोग. हाइंड ब्रेन में तीन स्ट्रक्चर्स है. तीन स्ट्रक्चर्स को क्लासिफाई किया गया है अंडर हाइंड ब्रेन. दैट इज आवर cerebellum. Then we have pons viralis, which we also called as pons, and this is medulla. Now cerebellum का काम है सारे मस्कुलर एक्टिविटी को कोऑर्डिनेट करना. जैसे हम लोग चल रहे हैं, बोल रहे हैं, दौड़ रहे हैं, तो all the movements that is occurring inside our body is actually done, is actually coordinated by the cerebellum. ओके, सो बॉडी का बैलेंस भी, जैसे हम लोग बैठे हैं, सो रहे हैं, खड़े हैं, सो ऑल दीज थिंग्स, बॉडी गिर तो नहीं जा रहा है जब, व्हेन वी आर स्टैंडिंग स्टिल वी डोंट फॉल, दैट इक्विलिब्रियम, दैट बैलेंस इज एक्चुअली मेंटेन्ड बाय द सेरिबेलम. पॉन्स वेरोलिस क्या करता है, ये सेरिबेलम के एक हिस्से से दूसरे हिस्से तक इम्पल्सेस ट्रांसमिट करता है. प्लस ये जितने भी मस्कुलर एक्टिविटीज है, जितने भी मस्कुलर मूवमेंट्स है, उनको भी ये कोऑर्डिनेट करवाता है. राइट, now we have this medulla oblongata. medulla oblongata बहुत ही important स्ट्रक्चर है और बहुत ही क्रूशियल स्ट्रक्चर है, जो कि जिसके डैमेज होने से हमारे ऑलमोस्ट हर फंक्शन बंद हो सकता है. जितने भी इंटरनल ऑर्गन्स है, जितने भी इनवॉलेंट्री एक्शंस है, वो सारी चीज, वो सारी चीज जैसे बीटिंग ऑफ हार्ट, ब्रीथ करना, सांस ले रहे हैं हम लोग, हार्ट हमारा बीट कर रहा है, देन द पेरिस्टाल्टिक मूवमेंट, जब भी हम लोग खाना खाते हैं तो मस्कुलर मूवमेंट जो अकर हो रहा है और एसोफेगस जो एग्जिबिट कर रहा है वो मस्कुलर मूवमेंट को, all those things are actually coordinated by this medulla oblongata. Fine, all these things are regulated by this oblongata, medulla oblongata. Right. Just a minute, I'm not getting the chats. Yeah, now it's okay. Now, अब हम लोग हर एक पार्ट को डिटेल में पढ़ेंगे. Now we are going to see all the parts in detail. So first we have taken the forebrain. Forebrain में भी हम लोग किसको ले लिए, हम लोग ले लिए हैं cerebrum को. So this is what, this is the largest part inside the human brain. Secondly, it is divided into two hemispheres. Okay, now this picture can tell you prominently. Can you see this second picture? This whole cerebrum, ये जो पूरा cerebrum है, ये दो हिस्सों में बांटा हुआ है. This one part is called as the left hemisphere, and this side of the cerebrum can be called as right hemisphere. ठीक है, so it is divided into two hemispheres. It is divided into two hemispheres. What are they? Left and right. Now, this left and right hemispheres are being coordinated to each other, with each other. अब इनके बीच में कोऑर्डिनेशन करवाता कौन है? तो एक लंबा सा ट्रैक्ट ऑफ नर्व फाइबर्स रहता है. ट्रैक्ट मीन्स गुच्छा, बंच ऑफ नर्व फाइबर्स. ठीक है, एक ट्रैक्ट जैसा स्ट्रक्चर रहता है. ट्रैक्ट यानी कि एक फाइबर जैसा स्ट्रक्चर रहता है, जो कि इन दो हेमिस्फेयर्स के बीच में कोऑर्डिनेशन करवाता है. या फिर हम कह सकते हैं कि मैसेजेस को एक हेमिस्फेयर से दूसरे हेमिस्फेयर तक ट्रैवल करने में मदद करता है. दिस स्ट्रक्चर इज नथिंग बट दिस इज called as the corpus callosum. So if you see in this picture, this red color thing which is highlighted by the red color, it is nothing but the corpus callosum. Callosum. Corpus callosum is nothing but it is tract or fiber of nerves which helps in coordination between the two hemispheres of the brain. तो ब्रेन, अभी हम लोग जस्ट देखें कि सेरिब्रम दो हिस्सों में बटा हुआ है, लेफ्ट हेमिस्फेयर एंड द राइट हेमिस्फेयर. नाउ बिटवीन दीज टू, how the coordination is being done? So this coordination is being done by a small tract of nerve fibers that we called as corpus callosum. This thing is called as corpus callosum. जो क्या करता है, इम्पल्सेस को ट्रांसफर करता है फ्रॉम वन हेमिस्फेयर टू अनदर हेमिस्फेयर, या फिर मैसेजेस को पहुंचाता है फ्रॉम वन हेमिस्फेयर टू अनदर हेमिस्फेयर, राइट? नाउ यू माइट बी सीइंग that this cerebrum, the structure of cerebrum is not smooth. जो सेरिब्रम का स्ट्रक्चर होता है ये स्मूथ नहीं होता है, इसमें काफी ज्यादा कन्वर्जन्स होते हैं. नाउ व्हाट इज कन्वर्जन्स? कन्वर्जन्स कुछ नहीं यानी कि फोल्डिंग्स. इन फोल्डिंग्स को हम क्या कहते हैं? कन्वर्जन्स कहते हैं. सो it has convergence, convergence which we also called as foldings, foldings. Fine. Now let's come to this. अब इन फोल्डिंग्स को हम लोग और ध्यान से समझते हैं. नाउ बिफोर इस फोल्डिंग्स को समझने के पहले हमें एक चीज़ और समझना है. जब हम लोग किसी भी ऑर्गन के बारे में पढ़ते हैं, वेदर यू टेक किडनी, वेदर यू टेक एड्रिनल ग्लैंड, तो कोई भी ग्लैंड या कोई भी ऑर्गन को हम लोग क्या करते हैं, दो हिस्सों में बांटते हैं. आउटर कॉर्टेक्स, आउटर पार्ट को हम लोग क्या कहते हैं? कॉर्टेक्स, आउटर कॉर्टेक्स. एंड इनर पार्ट को हम कहते हैं मेड्यूला. इन इस इनर पार्ट को व्हाट वी कॉल्ड इट एज मेड्यूला. हम इसे क्या कहते हैं? मेड्यूला कहते हैं. सिमिलरली ब्रेन को भी हम लोग डिवाइड कर दिए इनटू टू पार्ट्स, आउटर कॉर्टेक्स एंड इनर मेड्यूला. अब ये जो आउटर कॉर्टेक्स है ना, दिस आउटर कॉर्टेक्स हैज फोल्डिंग्स. तो ये आउटर कॉर्टेक्स है ब्रेन का, ये स्मूथ नहीं है, दिस इज नॉट स्मूथ. इट हैज सम फोल्डिंग्स और convergence which we called as technically convergence. So if you look at this picture carefully, then the convergence has been depicted prominently. तो ये क्या है? फोल्डिंग. ये इस तरह से एक फोल्ड बनाता है. Now what is the purpose of making this folding? The purpose of making this folding is to accommodate more and more nerve cells या neurons. ब्रेन क्या है? ब्रेन बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट ऑर्गन है. अब इस ब्रेन के अंदर ये ब्रेन, लेट मी टेक एन एग्जांपल. इफ यू टेक अ सरफेस लाइक दिस and if you take a surface like this, which one of the following structure will have more surface area? Obviously this one. इसके पास ज़्यादा सरफेस एरिया है. जितना ज़्यादा सरफेस एरिया रहेगा उतना ज़्यादा वो न्यूरॉन्स को अकोमोडेट कर सकता है, और जितना ज़्यादा न्यूरॉन्स का अकोमोडेशन होगा उतना अच्छे से ब्रेन कोऑर्डिनेट कर सकता है, इम्पल्सेस भेज सकता है, चीज़ों को प्रोसेस कर सकता है. एंड दिस इज द रीज़न कि जो सेरिब्रम का स्ट्रक्चर है, इट हैज़ कन्वर्जेंस. ये स्मूथ नहीं, इट हैज़ कन्वर्जेंस, प्रोमिनेंट कन्वर्जेंस. नाउ दिस फोल्डिंग इज एक्चुअली हैज़ टू पार्ट्स. ये जो कन्वर्जन है ये भी दो पार्ट से बना हुआ है. इफ यू सी इट केयरफुली, देन दिस फोल्डिंग, दिस रिज पार्ट जो उठा हुआ है, जो एलिवेटेड है, जो हल्का सा एलिवेटेड है, दिस इज व्हाट, दिस इज एक्चुअली द गाइरस. दिस इज एक्चुअली द गाइरस. ये जो फोल्ड है, दिस एलिवेटेड फोल्ड, एलिवेटेड यानी कि उठा हुआ सरफेस, एंड जो एम्बेडेड है, या फिर हम लोग कह सकते हैं ये जो एक गड्ढा या फिर एक ग्रूव बना रहा है, इसे हम क्या कहेंगे? इसे हम क्या कहते हैं? सल्कस, सिंगुलरली, या फिर सल्काई. सल्काई. दिस इज नथिंग बट द ग्रूव. ग्रूव यानी कि गड्ढा, ग्रूव यानी कि गड्ढा. ओके. सो दिस कन्वर्जेंस हैज टू पार्ट्स, दैट इज द फोल्डिंग. ठीक है, फोल्डिंग जो आउटर ऐसे एलिवेटेड पोर्शन रहता है उसको हम लोग गाइरस कहते हैं, और जो धसे हुए पार्ट होते हैं, ग्रूव होता है जो, उसे हम क्या कहते हैं? सल्कस कहते हैं. ऑल टुगेदर दे मेक अप द कन्वर्जन. ठीक है. आई एम जस्ट राइटिंग दिस थिंग हियर दैट convergence convergence increases the surface area, surface area of the brain, so as to accommodate more and more neurons. ठीक है. Any doubt till here? Any doubt till here? Whoever is watching, just tell me any doubt till here. Fine. Come on, share this session with your friends and known ones. Come on, quickly share this session. लेट्स कम टू द नेक्स्ट स्लाइड। हम लोग सेरिब्रम के बारे में पढ़ेंगे। We have studied about the cerebrum. Okay, now there is one more thing that we have missed out. This cortex region has the density of cell bodies. Now हमें पता है कि जो न्यूरॉन्स होते हैं वो दो पार्ट्स में बटे हैं, सेल बॉडी एंड द एक्सॉन। तो ये जो कॉर्टेक्स है, द आउटर मोस्ट पार्ट actually actually gives a space for the cell bodies. तो न्यूरॉन्स के जितने भी सेल बॉडीज हैं वो कॉर्टेक्स या कॉर्टिकल पार्ट ऑफ द ब्रेन में रहते हैं। और जितना भी मेड्यूला, जो भी एक्सॉन्स है वो इस मेड्यूला के अंदर एम्बेडेड रहते हैं। ठीक है, तो जितने भी एक्सोनल पार्ट है ऑफ दिस न्यूरॉन इज एक्चुअली एम्बेडेड इनसाइड द मेड्यूला। ठीक है, नाउ लेट्स कम टू cerebellum. Cerebellum is also called as little brain. Now let's look into this picture. Cerebrum is cerebellum, sorry, is quite highlighted prominently here. दिस इज कॉल्ड एज लिटिल ब्रेन। लिटिल ब्रेन क्यों? क्योंकि इसका स्ट्रक्चर काफ़ी ज़्यादा सिमिलर है सेरिब्रम से। ठीक है, इसका स्ट्रक्चर काफ़ी ज़्यादा सिमिलर है सेरिब्रम से। लोकेशन कहाँ प्रेजेंट रहता है? विद द पिक्चर इटसेल्फ वी कैन आइडेंटिफाई दैट दिस cerebellum is actually placed just below or at the base of the cerebrum. Suppose this is the cerebrum. Suppose this is the cerebrum. In just at the base of it, the cerebellum is present. Okay, so it is present at the base of the large cerebrum. Now there is a small difference. In cerebrum we can see that there are convolutions, but in cerebellum there are no convolutions. कोई भी फोल्डिंग्स नहीं प्रेजेंट होती है सेरिबेलम के अंदर, कोई भी फोल्डिंग्स प्रेजेंट नहीं होती, किसी भी तरह का कॉन्वर्जेंस नहीं होता है ना। आउटर कॉर्टेक्स, अगेन आउटर कॉर्टेक्स में सेल बॉडीज होते हैं, जस्ट लाइक जो हम लोग सेरिब्रम में देखे थे कि सेरिब्रम वाज डिवाइडेड इनटू टू लेयर्स, दैट इज आउटर कॉर्टेक्स एंड इनर मेड्यूला। एंड न्यूरॉन्स का अरेंजमेंट किस तरह से होता है? आउटर कॉर्टेक्स में सेल बॉडीज रहते हैं एंड इनर मेड्यूला में एक्सॉन प्रेजेंट रहता है, नाउ दिस सेल बॉडीज, जो जो एग्रीगेशन, सेल बॉडीज का जो एग्रीगेशन होता है कॉर्टेक्स में, ये एक ग्रे कलर का अपीयरेंस देता है। दिस इज द रीजन दैट वी कॉल्ड दिस आउटर कॉर्टेक्स एज ग्रे मैटर, ग्रे मैटर। द सेम थिंग विल बी एप्लीकेबल टू सेरिब्रम इवन। एंड इनर मेड्यूला को हम लोग कहते हैं वाइट मैटर, वाइट मैटर। वाई डू वी कॉल्ड इनर मेड्यूला वाइट मैटर? बिकॉज मेड्यूला के अंदर न्यूरॉन्स की जो एक्सॉन्स होते हैं वो एम्बेडेड रहते हैं और वो एक वाइट कलर का अपीयरेंस देते हैं, जिस कारण हम लोग क्या कहते हैं, इट एज अ वाइट मैटर। लेट मी अगेन एक्सप्लेन यू, whether you take a cerebrum or a cerebellum, it is divided into two parts, the outer cortex and inner medulla. The arrangement of neurons in such a way that जो न्यूरॉन्स के सेल बॉडीज होते हैं वो कॉर्टेक्स में प्रेजेंट रहता है एंड जो एक्सॉन होता है वो मेड्यूला में प्रेजेंट रहता है। जितने भी सेल बॉडीज है एक जगह इकट्ठे रहते हैं कॉर्टेक्स में और ये ग्रे कलर का अपीयरेंस देते हैं, जिसे हम क्या कहते हैं, ग्रे मैटर कहते हैं। जो मेड्यूला होता है उसमें एक्सॉन सारे एम्बेडेड रहते हैं और ये इकट्ठे यानी कि एग्रीगेट्स ऑफ एक्सॉन एक वाइट कलर का अपीयरेंस देते हैं, जिसे हम लोग क्या कहते हैं, वाइट मैटर। सो दिस इज द थिंग बिटवीन अ ग्रे मैटर एंड अ वाइट मैटर। नाउ सेरिबेलम का काम क्या होता है? व्हाट इज द फंक्शन ऑफ सेरिब्रम? जितना भी बैलेंस हम अपने बॉडी में, जितना भी बैलेंस बना रहे हैं, बैलेंस ऑफ बॉडी एंड मस्क्यूलर एक्टिविटी, लेट मी एक्सप्लेन यू। सपोज लाइक नाउ आई एम सिटिंग, तो मैं बैठे बैठे गिर तो नहीं जा रही हूँ, या डिसबैलेंस तो नहीं हो जा रहा मेरा बॉडी, इज बिकॉज दिस सेरिबेलम इज कॉन्स्टेंटली कोऑर्डिनेटिंग माई बॉडी टू सिट स्ट्रेट। जैसे हम लोग खड़े हैं, जैसे हम लोग बाईसाइकिल चला रहे हैं, किसी तरह के टू व्हीलर व्हीकल्स को चला रहे हैं, जहाँ पे बैलेंसिंग का ज़रूरत है हमें, जहाँ पे हमारे बॉडी को बैलेंसिंग का ज़रूरत है, वो कौन कोऑर्डिनेट करता है? दिस इज कोऑर्डिनेटेड बाय सेरिबेलम। पोस्चर ऑफ द बॉडी, स्ट्रेट रहना, हंच हो जाना, ये सारी चीज़ें सेरिबेलम ही कोऑर्डिनेट करता है। प्लस जो जितना भी मस्कुलर एक्टिविटी है, जैसे अगर हम लोग बाइट कर रहे हैं किसी चीज़ को या कोई भी चीज़ को मस्कुलर, जैसे दौड़ रहे हैं, चल रहे हैं, लिख रहे हैं, everything is being coordinated by this muscular activity. Okay, everything is being coordinated by this muscular sorry, this cerebellum. So balance of the body is maintained by cerebellum, and muscular activity जो भी है हमारे बॉडी में वो भी कौन कोऑर्डिनेट कर रहा है, सेरिबेलम कर रहा है. वन थिंग दैट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड, इट हैज नो कन्वर्जेंस. ठीक है, में कोई कन्वर्जन नहीं होता. सिमिलरली दिस cerebellum is also divided into two hemispheres, right hemisphere and left hemispheres, just like cerebrum. Now let's move to the next slide. Yes, we have medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata. Medulla oblongata क्या है? It is classified under this hind brain, right? Hind brain के अंडर ही हमारा medulla oblongata आता है. Now if we carefully look into this picture, I'm just highlighting this with red. ये जो है ये है हमारा cerebellum. It is cerebellum. Then this swollen part, इसे हम लोग क्या कहते हैं, pons venolis. एंड ये जो रेड कलर से हाईलाइटेड है, दिस इज नथिंग बट आर मेड्यूला ऑब्लोंगाटा. मेड्यूला ऑब्लोंगाटा, इट इज काइंड ऑफ ट्रायंगुलर इन शेप. इफ यू सी मेड्यूला ऑब्लोंगाटा तो ये ट्रायंगुलर शेप का होता है, कुछ इस तरह का होता है, ट्रायंगल जैसा होता है इसका. so we can write it here that medulla oblongata is classified under hindbrain and it is the bottommost part. It is present at the base of the brain. ठीक है, bottommost part. Now it is triangular in shape. It is triangular in shape. The next thing that is very important, ये जो medulla oblongata है further extend कर जाता है in the form of spinal cord. Now suppose this is this thing, this mic is actually medulla oblongata. ये further extend करना start होता है and makes up the spinal cord. ठीक है, ये क्या करता है, spinal cord को इस तरह से further ये extend होते रहता है spinal cord को बना. So our spinal cord is nothing but the extension of medulla oblongata only. Okay, it is the extension of the medulla oblongata only. So I can just write it here. It extends and continues as spinal cord. Spinal cord. Fine. Now कौन कौन से फंक्शंस को ये रेगुलेट करता है, जितने भी इंटरनल ऑर्गन्स के फंक्शंस हैं, जैसे डाइजेशन ऑफ फूड, पेरिस्टाल्टिक मूवमेंट ऑफ द एसोफेगस, हम ब्रीथ, जो हम लोग सांस ले रहे हैं, हार्ट बीट कर रहा है हमारा, हर चीज एवरीथिंग दैट इज एसोसिएटेड विद द फंक्शन ऑफ द इंटरनल ऑर्गन, जो कि इनवॉलेंट्री, जो कि हमारे कंट्रोल के अंडर नहीं है, वो सारे फंक्शंस को मेड्यूला ऑब्लोंगाटा कंट्रोल करता है. एंड इट्स वेरी एसेंशियल कि अगर मेड्यूला ऑब्लोंगाटा कभी भी किसी भी तरह से इंज्योर हो जाता है, इट कैन एक्चुअली अफेक्ट मेजर फंक्शंस इनसाइड आवर बॉडी. फाइन. तो हम लोग यहाँ पे लिख सकते हैं कि डाइजेशन ऑफ फूड, then peristaltic movement of esophagus. Peristaltic movement we have studied in our previous classes in the digestive system. जो वेव लाइक एक मूवमेंट होता है, वेव लाइक एक प्रोसेस होता है जिसमें जो हमारा एसोफेगस है वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट एंड रिलैक्स करता है रिदमिकली. इस मूवमेंट को हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं, पेरिस्टाल्टिक मूवमेंट बोलते हैं. इस पेरिस्टाल्टिक मूवमेंट की वजह से ही जो फूड है वो धीरे धीरे नीचे की तरफ, स्टमक की तरफ प्रोसीड करता है. फाइन. ऑल्सो breathing, the process of breathing is controlled by this medulla oblongata, and beating of heart, even beating of heart. So all the major things, all the major functions is being regulated by this medulla oblongata. और ये सारे functions क्या है, हमारे internal organs से associated है, internal organs के साथ ये associated है. Fine, fine. Now there is one more thing. एक term आता है brain stem. एक term आता है brain stem. Now what is brain stem? Brain stem is nothing. Brain stem is nothing but midbrain plus. This is the midbrain plus pons plus medulla oblongata. ये एक stem like structure बनाता है जिसे हम लोग क्या कहते हैं, brain stem. So brain stem includes the midbrain plus pons spiralis plus the medulla oblongata. oblongata. So medulla oblongata, pons and midbrain makes up the brain stem. तो ये है हमारा क्या? This is our brain stem. Fine. So we have completed with the structure of the brain and its associated part. In the next class, we are going to check with the spinal cord. Then we are going to see the reflexes, all kinds of reflexes, and the action potential. Okay, fine. Now again, I'm telling this thing to you people that we are just not providing you free lectures. We are also giving you free mock tests. For that, what you have to do, you have to go to the Google Play Store and download the app Metaguru. Okay. If you have any kind of inquiries, free mentorship or guidance, you can call or WhatsApp on this number. We are providing everything free on this platform. It's your duty to be very consistent and regular with the courses. Thank you. Have a nice